Ladies and gentlemen, entrepreneurs, professionals, and innovators from around the world, welcome to another episode of Topco Media's Business Unusual podcast. I'm your host, Janine Brown, Senior Conference Producer at Topco Media, and today we've got a treat for your ears and for your minds. As always, Business Unusual brings you the sharpest minds and the most fascinating stories from the business world. From CEOs to innovators from the stock exchange to wizards and experts in their fields, we've explored it all. And today is no exception. Today, we have our special guest with us, who is someone who knows the ins and the outs of leadership development, team dynamics, and has a magic touch when it comes to coaching in the workplace. She's not just a practitioner, she's a magician of motivation, a conductor of collaboration, and a maestro of management. Without further ado, let me introduce the brains and heart behind Credo Growth, the one, the only Heléne Smuts. Welcome, Heléne.
Thank you, Janine. I really appreciate it. Like I said, earlier to you, please come with me wherever I go and do that intro to all my clients. I really would appreciate that. That was amazing. Thanks for being here.
Judging from your bio and the energy that you've brought beforehand, I know that this is going to be an amazing discussion. And you're in the right place to have a bit of an unusual conversation, because unusual is our middle name. So before we embark on our journey through the intricacies of leadership and team dynamics, can you give our global audience a little sneak peek into your incredible journey and how you've become the go-to expert in these fields?
Sure. Incredible journey. Yes. I think I'll start off by saying I grew up in Pretoria. So I've got a very strong Afrikaans background, and I grew up in a minister's household. So both my mum and my dad are and were both ministers, not even to talk about my grandparents and all of that. So you can imagine all of the combination of that. But I think as growing up and looking at what my dad is doing and how he also supported people, I naturally ended up, after first studying BCom tourism management and having finished that degree, I realized that, you know what, I want to travel, but I want to travel on my account. I don't want to organize other people's travels. And with that, I morphed into industrial psychology all the way while I was still working at a tour operating business, which was amazing, where I got a lot of my learnings. And then I moved into the industrial psychology field, did my studies in that, did further studies in honors, and then moved into advanced coaching, personality profiling, further training and transactional analysis. So all of these kind of behavioral psychology and understanding of that really got me to the point where I am today. Started off with first a coaching practice, and then started another business with German shareholders for 11 years, left that, and then started Credo Growth. So it's been a roller coaster ride, and it's been amazing in different industries, but man, it's great to have touched on so many different clients and industries throughout my career. And I guess that's, it fuels me, which is fantastic.
I mean, that's really awesome. And hearing the motivations behind it, you seem like a very driven and a motivated person. And I wanted to ask you, what is Credo Growth? So when we look at them or when we Google them, like, what do we expect from them? Who is Credo Growth?
So if I have to give you our elevator pitch, as everyone calls it, we're basically a growth consultancy. And we support our clients. We're obsessed about growth, and personally, I'm obsessed about high performance. So we support our clients to grow through people development, to grow through strategy and execution, and also to grow through sales. So it's those three legs that we look at, and internally for the client, then it's really about business growth. Credo Growth started out as only a I don't mean to put it down, but as a people development consultancy. I also got to a stage where I realized I need to bring in big guns, people who know more than me about business. Otherwise, the business can only grow to a certain extent. And I did that, and it's fantastic. And they push me out of my comfort zone every day. But with that, and over the years, we evolved it into scale up support for businesses, strategic growth and execution, and then the sales growth in terms of sales consulting and sales training.
So
So
it
that,
definitely seems like your journey has taken you from different corners of the world, working with diverse clients and discovering the beauty of unlocking the potential in the workforce.
yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I mean, your beautiful intro is so amazing. I certainly don't see myself as a master yet, because every single time we work with a different client in a different country, and even a client in South Africa, different clients in South Africa, there's so much more information that we are getting, and you go, I didn't even think of that. I didn't think of that. So it's a continuous learning process. And also, if you can imagine going through the different generations of working and team development and leadership and all of those things. So it's a continuous learning process, which I am extremely grateful for.
Well, speaking of that learning, if anybody would like to learn a little bit more from Heléne, she will be joining us at the Future of HR conference on the 22nd to the 23rd of November as one of our VIP speakers. So please make sure that you tune in for that time. And, Heléne, could you just share your insights on the most significant challenges and opportunities that lie ahead in the realm of HR and people development?
Yeah, that's quite an interesting one, because I mean, how long is a piece of string? Hey, we can talk about so many things, but I think the things that stand out for me, and other things might stand out for other people by all means, but what stand out for me, because I look at it from a Credo lens as well, is that, and especially in the States, I see this coming up quite often, shortage of workers, skills, and leadership. And it might sound a bit strange, but if you think about it, shortage of workers in companies is the people who are working, they tend to these days go for companies that offer really extremely high flexibility. So if you are not a dynamic organization like that, and if your HR department doesn't support you in becoming a dynamic organization, you might find yourself struggling for talent. Another, especially in South Africa, what we've seen, especially in the tech world, we work with a lot of tech businesses across the tech industry, is their whole idea of tech software developers. They can sit wherever they want to sit in the world. So it's, hey, stay in South Africa, we pay you in dollars. So they are starting to headhunt our top talent. And also from a skills perspective, which I find, I mean, we are so busy because of this lack of skill, is the lack of having tough conversations and giving one another feedback. It's almost like as if people don't want to go there anymore. They don't want to have those difficult conversations. Critical thinking skills and the ability to solve problems without going to someone and run it past them, but have the confidence in your own ability to think critically and solving problems. And then on the leadership side of things, again, so many specialists, especially in the tech world again, have been made or have been promoted into management and leadership positions to do with these amazing specialists. And then you hear them in coaching sessions going, I never wanted this. I don't want people. I don't want to care about signing off leave or anything. I just want to do what I do well. So then there's the lack of investment in leadership skills development, management skills development, because you're so great. You're the best salesperson. You are going to be the best sales manager. No, doesn't work like that. So that's what we are busy seeing at the moment. And also from an HR point of view, is you can imagine HR many moons ago comes from very admin orientated to being a cost center. Now the expectation is that your HR person needs to be a strategic business partner. They have to line the HR processes with the strategy of the business. And that's not easy if you come from the administrative HR perspective. So that for me is a challenge, but also a great opportunity for HR to have a voice. And I think the opportunity for HR is also there to prove themselves that they are strategic partners. I work with amazing HR people who now work very, very much on the executive level. They get into the board meetings, where previous years, or quite a few years ago, that wasn't the case. And then, of course, with the hangover that we have from COVID and the hybrid workplace and the remote work,
Yes.
there's a lot of opportunity for HR to step in and hold these team development discussions so that they can build trust, so that people can have tough conversations and give each other feedback. But I think the biggest challenge for HR and leadership and learning and development is not having that trust anymore, not having that connection. The biggest opportunity is bringing that back into the business.
Especially within especially within the frame of COVID, I think we speak about businesses as not just being rigid anymore. There's a little bit of an agility that's necessary, especially when we come to HR and the HR protocol. And I think that agility expands past even just the workplace. It also then moves into your personal life. So outside of your professional life, Heléne, you're a mom of 2 beautiful twin girls. Okay. So what are you passionate about, and how does your personal interest influence your professional approach and your mindset?
Yeah. So these 2 beautiful 8-year-old girls are going on 16 by their emotional fluctuations and things like that. I'm obviously very passionate about them and I love them to bits. But in terms of my personal passions is I mean, you can see in the picture over, I don't know if you can see it, but I am a big fan of free diving. That's taken in Greece, where we went cave diving, free diving in caves. I'm obsessed with yoga, hiking, and then a more passive side of things is Formula One.
That's the passive side?
Yeah, because, well, not from a heart rate point of view, but you said still, all the other stuff is like it's active, it's outdoors and things like that. And I think each of those things give me kind of different things that I apply in my professional life. I think, first of all, the twins, I never used to have a lot of patience. And I would used to just my personality style. You said earlier, driver and all of those things, is I needed things done fast and quick and now. And I will get irritated if that doesn't happen. And these 2 girls have completely taught me to kind of like embrace the moment and not, I can lean into patience and it's totally fine. The outcome is still going to be the same, which has been a big learning curve over the past 8 years. But I think from a free diving perspective is that whole notion of gather as much information about the dive that you are about to do so that I can take the risk. Don't know if that makes sense, but if like literally with that one over there, you have to dive down 7 meters and then you have to swim under a slab of rock for 25 meters. And then you go into a cave that's pitch black. And of course, when you go in, you need to come back out again. So, and I realized, and we did loads of those things, but it's gather information from someone who has done it before to ask, how long is it going to take? How deep do I need to go? How long is the slab?
Yeah.
What can I expect on the other side? For me, I realized that is important. In order for me to be able to take risks in business, I realized I need to have all the information because I saw how it played out in my freediving. That if I have the information, my mind goes, you can do this. This is how you're going to do it. This is how you're going to breathe. So there's a lot of endurance that I build with having information. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it makes perfect sense, actually. And I think that the metaphor that you used of the free diving makes so much sense, because especially in business, when we're going through these moments of change or moments where as a company you either have to scale up or pivot or change, it seems like you're going underneath and you don't know how deep or how long or how wide or when is your next breath of air going to come before you have to go back in again. And I think that especially at Credo, it seems like you ensure that your customers are guided in that journey, that they're not, of course, left, that you've given them that information so that they make sure that when they do make their decisions to dive in with you, that you're holding their hands and that you're guiding them and you're making sure that they have the way out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's it was quite I actually wrote a blog about it, the realization that I had about my free diving, how free diving has impacted how I lead the business.
And then when we speak about the same element of free diving, and we talk about that same level of agility, just to go back to what we've spoken about, how does that then transform into our mental health? You know, there's been a lot of burnout going around within, and there's a lot of chatter around burnout. But what is burnout, and how does it actually affect us? And, you know, is it a direct way that we all know that the person's just disengaged, or is there another way that burnout affects us that we're not even, you know, privy to?
Look, there's of course many different factors that one needs to take into account when it comes to burnout, because for those who are really fundamentally experiencing it, I'm not talking about that group. There's obviously areas where it really is real, and we need to address those things, and mental wellness and all of those things. But what's interesting from all of us at Credo have been seeing over the past few years in our clients is when we actually get down to the root cause of why people are feeling so extremely exhausted and they say they burnt out, it boils down to trust. Because if you look at these teams, they go home, and what they do is they're upset about the day that they had because 2 of their colleagues didn't include them in a meeting, and now they're wondering what was said about them. Now, you can imagine if that happens to you, you're wondering what your colleagues are saying about you. That lingers in your head. Okay, now you go home. Now you talk about it with your friend, your partner, whomever. Now it becomes bigger. The following day, something else happens. You see 2 other people at the coffee station, and they so happen to look in your direction, and they look back, and now you go, oh, they're talking about me again. Or you don't know whether you're getting feedback. You're like, my manager hasn't given me feedback on any of this. And then if you go to him or her, it's like, yeah, no, you did fine. Like, well, fine is not going to make me get any better, is it? So you're not getting information. So you start to distrust the people that you're working with, and that distrust is causing you to go into assumptions, and assumptions is exhausting because we tend to most of the time come up with the wrong assumptions. And that kind of that prophecy that keeps repeating itself is then what we find is causing the burnout, or what we might feel is burnout. Again, I'm not talking about the burnout from a real intensity perspective where people are really, really overworked. And then when we work with these teams and we work with them through these trust issues and the ability to ask and give feedback, you can just see how lighter the team is, and people go, I actually enjoy coming to work. I'm not exhausted anymore. I don't know what happened. I'm like, well, we know. So it's I just want people to take into account, whether you're a leader, a founder, or a team member, is to first assess, why am I so exhausted? Is it because of the dynamics that's going on in my team? Because that can impact how your burnout builds and builds and builds, to the point where it might really be, because I don't know if you know this, but sometimes burnout, you end up in hospital and you have to have bed days. It really is quite a big deal. And if we can stop it at the core with team dynamics, then I'm very happy.
I think especially with the trust, I think you're mentioning trust and support go hand in hand. So if you feel that trust, you also feel that support. And then if you feel that support, then mentally you wouldn't feel the strain. So I definitely see that there's a cycle. And when you are working with companies to enhance their workplace culture, and that's a significant part of your work, what are some of the common challenges organizations face in this regard, and how do you guide them towards creating a positive workplace culture? Because now we've identified that burnout is there. We've identified some of these issues. So now how do we transform that workplace environment that, you know, people can speak out, or that the trust is built?
There are so many different ways, and depending on the client and the issues that we are dealing with, we kind of bespokely design something that's going to work for you. But if I can almost do a blanket answer for you, is we look at, I love the model by Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I'm obsessed about it. So we often use that to give us a bit of a measuring stick where the team is at, or where the organization is at. And based on that, we can see where the issues are lying. And then it is about literally zoning in on those different issues. And we call it mining the topics. So getting to the pink elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, And that's the hard part. And that's why people struggle with it, because they don't have a facilitator who can hold that space for them. But when you get to the crux of the issue, then you unpack, why did that happen? How is it happening? How does it feel for you? What's going on for you? And it's all resistance crumble in that moment, because people realize, like, oh my goodness, I completely misinterpreted that. Or, wow, I was in the wrong here and I didn't even notice. Someone else, for example, had such a big issue about the fact that her employment contract was with a sister company, but she was part of the team that we were working with and reporting into the holding company's leader. So her loyalty felt divided, and that for her was such a big deal that she was exhausted by it, and I can get it. But before we couldn't unpack as to where it actually came from, and it was literally just the fact that she signed a contract there and she's reporting here. When we were able to identify that, it's almost like she became a new person. She's like, oh, I can do both. It's fine. And it sounds so simple right now. When you are so tired and so divided and short, kort van draad amper. I don't know if you know that word, that saying in Afrikaans. How do you translate that into English? If you're on edge, it's difficult to come up with the most kind of basic reason as to why something is happening.
Of course, and especially because if in that state you're so overwhelmed with everything, sometimes it's a bit harder to think straight. So it's important that, of course, if you then create that structure for these employees, that then moving forward, they know that there's a way, or there's a formal structure that they can again use to address the issue again, so that if something again arises in this way, that they can fall back on. So if you can mention the book again, what is the book? The 5 Simple?
It's The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. So what we do is we use the model of 5 dysfunctions just as our basic starting point. And then we do different things. We have interviews with people in the team, depending on how intense the culture is, or how dysfunctional or how toxic even sometimes. We also have leadership sessions where we apply where we give the leaders the skills to lead their team. And that's where we, for example, use my book, which is Ditch Mediocrity, just in terms of giving them the skills so that they can have open conversations. Then we also bring in the whole organization to not necessarily, it depends again on the leader, but almost to co-create, how are we going to be together in this business? And on each level of those high performing team charter, how are we going to behave? How are you going to be together? What can we expect from one another? And if there are things in there that they don't know how to do, for example, how to give feedback, then it's a skills development. So you go from culture development to skills development. And often people see those as two different things, but they're so intertwined.
So I think what's really important is that you're talking about a strategic investment, is needed when achieving those business goals. And, that investment is in people. So could you provide me with of examples of how this investment can lead to a tangible business outcome or transformation? So now we've identified the burnout. We're going through the training. We are seeing, okay, cool, this is our way out. We are now building that trust. We're going through the program now. Where does the outcome part come, or where does the transformation happen?
Yeah. So the first thing that I want to say is the reason why I'm saying, or one of the reasons why I'm saying it should be a strategic theme and not a side project, is because transformation doesn't happen in a 2-day workshop. And many people go, oh, please come and fix my team quickly. You can have 2 days with them. But no, that's unfortunately not how it's going to work. Yes, you're going to get a quick fix, but you might find that people will go back into their old habits again, or old behavior. So in order to see the transformation, when you want to embark on this culture journey and developing your people journey, it's a strategic thing. And strategy is not a 2-week or 3-week thing. Strategy is a longer term thing. And you can have short-term strategies and medium-term and all of those things. So majority of our work that we do is, for example, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, up to 18 months, even depending on what is required. But some examples is we For example, one of our clients in Joburg, also in the IT space, they were such a machine type culture organization. So just out with work, go home, come back. No, that was it. For many different reasons that we don't have to go into now. And just by seeing this culture as a strategic input or a strategic theme, what has happened is that organization has transformed where the executive team now have quarterly sessions with us. The leadership team is going through development journey. And what has ultimately happened is we didn't even have to go and work with the rest of the business. And they are 50 people strong business because the leadership team took it so seriously. They are driving it inside of that business. And they're having leadership fireside chats. They are having they've implemented meeting rhythms. They are now having kind of, the team building kind of things, which is the socials after work and those kind of things. And that for me is true return on investment if your leadership team even takes ownership of it and drives the rest. Yes, we chat with them and we support them here and there, but how amazing that they are independently now driving their culture. Another example is with where we did kind of rolling out a feedback culture in the States for a huge business, about 450 people strong, where some of the employees took on that feedback culture and said, hold on, because they operate in different states. And as you know, in America, different states are like different countries with different cultures, each one. And
different laws, different rules, different...
Yeah. I get so confused. That these different states started working well together to the point where they're not even including their managers in conversations anymore. So I literally had a call with them last week with a management team to say, how's it going? Like, we're not hearing petty complaints. They're just sorting it out on their own. And the manager's like, I've got extra time because I don't have to worry about what's going on because I know it's happening. So it's little things like that you can't necessarily pin down to the bottom line of your business, but you can pin it down to productivity, which affects bottom line. You can pin it down to employee engagement, which affects retention of your employees. So there's so many return on investment things that you can look at. But again, it's a long-term process.
I think because, let's say, for example, there's no formalized way to pinpoint, like it's this percentage or this, people are disregarding it as something that is maybe valuable for their organizations. But I can assure you, somebody that's getting the same amount of pay will choose between a good employer with a good workplace culture over anybody with a terrible workplace culture, even if they paid more. So I think that you going in and making sure that we're changing the things and making sure that these workplaces are employees is more than just employees. They're seeing them as people at work, people who have feelings, people who have, emotions and different aspects of their lives that come together, that also comes, on the backside of them coming to work. There's other things. And I think that also by you giving them the tools to equip themselves, like you said, you can even step back and you find out that you're not dealing with the petty arguments or the petty things anymore, that they're, self-regulating. So I think it's really important to emphasize that transformation is not a 2-day journey. You are 100% correct. And if your organization needs the 18 months, the 6 months, the 6 weeks, if we can sign up for those fitness challenges for 21 days, we can sign up for the challenges to make sure that our business culture is also transformed. And this leads me to my next question for you. When you are developing these high-performing teams, how do you define and measure the success? And are there specific metrics or indicators that you find most effective?
Yeah. So I think the most obvious answer is, for example, you get Bamboo HR, you get, I can't even remember all the different kind of apps that there are, and in each, especially in the bigger corporates, you have your employee engagement survey that goes out twice a year or once a year. So those are, you've got your eNPS score, your employment net promoter score, or employee net promoter score. All of those things they're great. They give you a lot of information. The issue that I have with that is when that information is not taken and then executed on. Because then it's like, oh, we're just doing this because we're supposed to do this. And then what you see in a lot of organizations is that they say, yeah, they did it, but then we don't hear the results, we don't hear back, we don't see any change. That's my issue, first of all, is if you do that and you execute on it, fantastic, that's amazing. But what we specifically do is, so we don't design employee engagement surveys for other corporates. There are incredible companies out there that are great at that, and it's good. But what we personally do in Credo is I use the team and the company assessment for 5 dysfunctions of a team, because it's easy. It gives us a rating between 3 and 9. It's red, yellow, green. So there's different ways to look at it, and we can pinpoint exactly, is it a trust issue? Is it a conflict issue? Is it a commitment issue? Is it an accountability issue? Or is it a team focus and team results issue? And then we can also see.
Have you, oh, so sorry. Have you ever been in circumstances where you find that a team has all 5 of the issues, where it's, in a really detrimental position, where you're like, wow, there's trust issues, there's issues with accountability, there's issues with the different levels. And what do you do in those sort of circumstances?
You go in gently. No, I'm teasing. But it has happened where teams are really, really in. I mean, I worked with a team that was about to dissolve completely.
Oh, wow.
And I think every single team member in that meeting sat in tears. And we pushed through. And that was also, this was a shorter journey because it was only it was like 4 people. But it was the executive team. And they were literally planning on dissolving the business. And they had quite a few employees, to the point now, I checked in with them a few weeks ago, they've 3x their business just because of sorting their stuff out. So what we do in those cases is I keep my wits about myself, or my facilitators keep their wits about themselves, because your ultimate aim is to get these people through level 1, which is to trust one another. And then once you get to that point, then you go, okay, now that the trust is there, now let's see how can we give you permission, or how can you give each other permission in order to start having passionate debates and disagree without taking offense, and kind of raising opinions, knowing that it's coming from good intent because you trust each other. So you literally then take them step by step, slowly through every single level. I ultimately believe in that model. That's why I keep using it so often. I don't always use it because it depends a little bit on which team we're working with. But so yeah, to answer your question, yes. And then you literally you start at the bottom. But what we've also seen, and I've seen that a lot, especially in South Africa, is the trust is not there. And this is, again, hangover of COVID, remote work, hybrid work, because we trust who we know well, and because we're not in the office, we don't connect anymore. And when we're on Zoom or Teams, it's operational conversations. So it's not, I get to know you and therefore I can trust you and I know how you work and I know what makes you tick. So the trust is not there, and people don't want to disagree. They don't want to say, I made a mistake. They don't want to challenge the status quo to their colleagues and to their manager. But the interesting thing that I see in South Africa is that the commitment is still there. So everyone can say that they are very committed, but it's almost like a disgruntled commitment. So everyone else will, and maybe that's the makeup of us as South Africans. I mean, I know some of the international market look at us and go, South Africans are hardworking, they're loyal, they make sure that they get things done. So that commitment piece might be, and I need to actually do a little bit of research into this now that I think about it, but it might be our makeup in terms of us South Africans. But then again, the accountability piece is again very, very low again. So that happened where you see this very strong commitment. I worked with a team last week where that was the case. Like when we in deadlines and end of months, we push through, we support each other. But the moment it goes out of month end, then there's no support and people are bickering, and so it's very interesting. Yeah.
And I think mentioning that you've got that experience, that global experience that allows you to evaluate those sort of things, working with clients from South Africa and America, Europe, how do you perceive differences in leadership and team dynamics across these regions? And are there universal principles, or does it require adapting to each, cultural context? So how do you go about, these sorts of things?
I think maybe let's start with the universal principles, is especially in team dynamics. Everyone wants to know that what they work on has meaning and that it adds value to something. So that's the one thing. And that is a global thing around, even if you're the leader, if you're the employee, if you're the founder, you want to know that your work means something and adds value. Call it purpose-driven if you want. The second thing is everyone wants to know that they are being seen by their leader and by their peers, but acknowledged by their leaders. So not just a number or not just another pawn in the value chain. It's like, hey, my leader takes an interest in me. He or she makes an effort to understand me. And then the third thing that I also see globally, people want to know whether they're doing a good job or not, and they want to know how they can change to do their job better. Again, people are very scared to give feedback. So there's a need in order to understand where can I do better, but there's a reluctance in telling you where you can go do better because I don't want to hurt your feelings. Those two are not working together. So those are the three things that I universally see is prominent in team members, in teams, and in organizations. And I think the difference is, so first of all, I love working with the States, but and I love going there. It's probably it's a great country. But what I see there is, compared to how we are in South Africa, is the States are extremely cautious around what they say. There's so many rules in the organizations of what you can say and what you can ask, that people are so worried to offend or to say something that's going to run to and the person is going to run to HR. So it's very much say something so that you don't step over the line, and don't say anything because you rather protect yourself. So that's the one thing that I find. And the clients that we are working with is working with us because they want to break away from that, which is fantastic. They want to break away from this cautiousness and getting offended quickly. They want people to have tough conversations and give each other feedback. The other thing which was fascinating that I found out as I was working in the States over the past few years, is when we, for example, bring in the culture of feedback and the culture of admitting mistakes and challenging the status quo and those things, is that they have such a strong military background. Majority of them is like male and female. And in the military, you don't go against the hierarchy. It's yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Yes,
so
yes.
Now all of a sudden bring in and almost like rip that culture or that kind of training from underneath them to say you are allowed to say to your manager and to your leader. In fact,
and it's not seen as being and it's not being seen as being disobedient.
Yeah. And they go, I can't do the American accent, but it's like, Heléne, you're really asking a lot of us now. So that was fascinating to understand. And yes, we have military here, but it's, with my lack of understanding of our military, it's not as prominent as it is in the US, which was for me quite a big thing to uncover. And then I think in Europe, my perception is that it's very calculated, very much around impact, sustainability, and how they do their business and what is the business doing in terms of impact and sustainability. So ultimately, that's kind of how they lead their businesses too. And I think from the few clients that I've worked with in Europe, very much there's also a need for consensus. Wanting to get everyone involved and making sure that we hear everyone's opinion and those kind of things. And then you come to South Africa, and I think I think just maybe because of our background and our environment and how a lot of us grow up, and some of our very dynamic cultures that we have in this country, we are seen to be a bit more aggressive in terms of how we speak, and that we are a bit more direct in how we talk. So people experience us as very direct and to the point, and sometimes a little bit maybe insensitive.
Do you think that maybe that is from like a linguistic perspective? Because many South Africans either have spoken, let's say, a native language, which is either their Afrikaans or Zulu or Tswana, which is maybe sometimes more direct, because we know Afrikaans is a direct language. So now when you translate it into English, it sounds quite harsh, because then maybe that's why our English, maybe in English speaking, we're so harsh, but when we directly translate it, it is what it is. You said you call a spade a spade.
Yeah. I think there's so many variables. I think it's the language thing. I think for some people, how they grow up, it's kind of like grow a pair, toughen up, and move on.
Definitely very South African, yes.
Yeah. But what I have also seen, which is where we also play a big part, and which I'm very excited about, is that there's so many, because of globalization, in terms of how many international businesses there are, that there's so many European and kind of British and USA companies that have teams in South Africa for whatever many reasons. Maybe it's shared services, or it's a software team, or it's a tech team, doesn't matter. But what we see is when these engage, is these South Africans are sitting in these teams and almost feeling inferior to the international headquarters. I want to get to a point, or what we work with these clients, and the international businesses don't think that of the South African teams. They're like, you guys work so hard, you're amazing, you're loyal, you always deliver. But it's almost that, we are South African, we are smaller than the rest of the world. And for me, it's like, own the fact that you are so kind of dynamic and can be very agile and speak up. So instead of saying, yeah, but the Americans always, or the Europeans this, they think we're not so good, I'm like, try and get out of that narrative, because it's not necessarily always true. So that's also what we see, is we make ourselves small, instead of, we need to step into our own power of what we contribute to these international businesses.
I think, especially, speaking as a perspective from a South African, I think that we definitely have a lot of internalized biases towards ourselves. Or, that kind of, before you even, I went to a recent Harvard MBA masterclass or thingy that I've done. And they were speaking to the applicants. And this one girl said, she did her GMAT test twice and her GRE test twice. And she never applied to Harvard because she felt that her marks were not good enough. And the man on the stage said, and he's the administrator, he said, but you didn't apply. We didn't disqualify you. You disqualified you. Yeah. So sometimes I think you're right. We disqualify ourselves. And, as we're going to close this discussion, I want to ask you, is there any final thoughts or ideas you'd like to leave our, Business Unusual audience with?
Sure. I think again, coming from the kind of work that we do, is if you are leading a business, kind of put some time aside to think around, how can you make your organization irresistible? What is it that you need to do to stand out in this very dynamic, agile world, so that people want to stay with you, even if they can get the dollars somewhere else? Like, how are you able to hold on to these amazing talent that you have? Because we see the trend coming from shortages of workers and skills and leadership. So that's the one thing, is how can you make your organization irresistible? And then, again, from what I've seen, is please make it a strategic theme. There are so many amazing consultancies like ours out there that can support businesses to make it a strategic theme, and that can support and almost like transfer the skill inside the business, so that you don't constantly have to hold on to these consultancies. But I think that it's really about investing in your people. You're going to have to, if you're the CEO, if you're a leader, you're going to have to be aware of what the people issues are and what the execution issues are in your business. And deal then with those people issues and execution issues instead of just thinking about goal outcome. It's understand those issues and get to the core of it. That would be my.
I think again, thank you so much, Heléne. I think you've mentioned so many valuable insights. And, this does bring us to the end of this enlightening episode of Topco Media's Business Unusual podcast, but with the incredible Heléne Smuts. So we've enjoyed this dynamic journey into the world of leadership development, team dynamics, and workplace magic. And I think that your insights are invaluable. And the experiences and the examples that you shared with us today has been so simple yet so effective that even if somebody is listening to this podcast, they can be able to apply this not only within the realm of their workplace, but sometimes it can even be applied into the interpersonal level. When you're dealing with friends and family conflict, a similar thing can still be applied. And I enjoy the fact that you take the skill that you are teaching organizations is transferable. And, being high performing doesn't have to be within the realm of just the workplace. You can also be a high performing, family member. You can be a really good sister also. You can be a really good, partner for your person at home. So I really, really enjoyed the insight that you shared. And it was really a privilege to have you on our show today. So thank you so much, Heléne.
And also, thank you so much for having me. I love chatting to you. It was awesome to do that on this week before the rugby finals.
Listen, we are all going crazy for the Bokke at this moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I'm getting goosebumps as I'm standing here. So let's see what happens. High performing teams, right? And trust that is a team that really trusts one another and focus on what really matters, which is important.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And to our fantastic audience, we couldn't do this without you. So thank you so much for joining us from all corners of the globe. Your support and enthusiasm are what keep Business Unusual thriving. If you've been inspired by today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with your colleagues and friends. Stay connected with us on social media and catch up with the latest updates and exclusive content on the Business Unusual page. You can have a look at us at Topco Media on our YouTube page, as well as our website at www.topco.co.za. And before we go, remember, the world of business is ever evolving, and the solutions to its challenges are often found in the most unconventional places. So keep thinking differently, keep challenging the norm, and keep making the business world more unusual. My name is Janine Brown, and we are signing off. Take care and keep making the world a little bit more unusual every day. Thank you.